21. And because it's a study session, we don't need a quorum, and we're just going to learn about something this evening and not take any action or make any final decisions. And so we'll call the meeting to order, and I'll turn it over to city staff to give us a presentation so we can learn about this topic.
Okay, good evening, City Council. This is Megan Davis, Deputy City Manager. Tonight, we're going to provide an overview of the city's plans for the Level Clear reopening for COVID-19 and share an update on our plans for special events here at the city this summer. I'm going to start with some background information on current orders and give a brief overview of the Level Clear plan. I won't have a presentation in front of you tonight. There are several documents in the packet that give you some background and information. And then we will open it up for questions from City Council. Of course, as the mayor said, as a study session, we're not asking you to take action or provide any direction, but we will have the opportunity to, hear questions and input and stuff. So we're joined, I just want to let you know that I'm joined by Director Nathan Mosley, the Director of Parks, Rec, and Open Space, Director Sharon Nemechek, Director of Library and Museum Services, Assistant City Manager for Communication and Special Projects, Emily Hogan, City Clerk Muth. They all will be sharing some information about reopening as well, and of course, City Manager Bowser. Okay, so just a little background. As you're aware, over the past 2 months, the state, Boulder County, and the city have been moving toward a reduced COVID-19 regulatory environment. In mid-April, the state eliminated the DIAL framework and devolved most of the COVID-19 public health regulations to the local level. Boulder County Public Health, in conjunction with the other metro area public health departments, adopted a modified DIAL framework that included a gradual step down of public health measures as the state and local vaccination rates have increased. Boulder County Public Health provided you all with an overview of the Level Blue and Level Clear orders when they came to talk with City Council in April. So I know you already have some background on this. In addition to these public health orders, the state, county, and city still have mask orders in place. Our mask ordinance at the City of Louisville requires face coverings to be worn within all indoor public spaces. And under both the city's ordinance and the county's order, facial coverings are not required outdoors. Exceptions to the indoor masking requirement, including for children under 2, are spelled out in the city ordinance, which is attached in the packet. So our mask order is more protective and therefore supersedes the county's order within the city limits. And the city's facial covering ordinance, as you may recall, is in effect until repealed. On May 5th, Boulder County Public Health adopted a new public health order for facial coverings in the county. And that was included in your packet as well. Masking is still required indoors in certain settings, regardless of vaccination status. That includes places like preschools, childcare centers, indoor children's camps, public areas of state government facilities, like our buildings, county or municipal government buildings, congregate care facilities such as nursing homes and assisted living, prisons and jails, healthcare settings and emergency medical settings, and then retail stores like groceries and public-facing portions of other businesses. However, the county order does now include several exemptions based on vaccination status for indoor areas, other than those areas listed above. So they include that if there are 9 or fewer unvaccinated individuals or individuals of unknown vaccine status present in the space, or at least 80% of the individuals in a space have shown proof of vaccination. So it gets a little bit more complex and a little bit more specific and ties the mask order to vaccinations. Again, right now, the city ordinance is what applies in the city of Louisville. So our Level Clear plan that we will be discussing tonight incorporates the current city requirements to mask indoors and encourages masking outdoors when 6 feet social distancing can't be maintained. If the city council were to desire to modify or repeal the city's mask ordinance, it would require a future agenda item and a council discussion. And if that were to occur, staff could revise the Level Clear plan and our special events plan to reflect any changes there. So the Level Clear plan provides the public with an overview of operational plans for city programs, services, events, and facility operations, and the required public health protocols. So they know what to expect when they're coming to our facilities. As of now, the plan will be in effect until August 15th, at which time we would reassess based on the Boulder County Public Health orders. But as mentioned previously, it could change if the city's mask order. Six-foot social distancing indoors and for outdoor activities and programming. Social distancing also is encouraged when possible. The plan does retain public health and safety measures in city facilities and buildings. Things like no entry to buildings if you're feeling sick or ill, hand sanitization and hand washing recommended, and sanitization stations will still be included at city facilities. Plexiglass barriers at the in-person service stations in most of our in-person facility stations, and sanitizing of frequently touched surfaces. We have learned a lot about how the public accesses our services, and will continue to provide most of the city services online, particularly those administrative services that we provide to the community. So there are different hours and days of opening, expanded hours from what we've had previously in COVID, which will be observed at each facility. City Hall, the White House, and the police and courts buildings will be open Monday through Thursday from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. for in-person services. And remote and online services will continue to be provided Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And we wanted to share that the city has also adopted a new telework and remote work policy. It went into place May 1st. And so this is something that really supports our sustainability initiatives, as well as helping with workforce retention and attraction, as employees have really seen this as a benefit. This won't impact our in-person services, however, as telework plans have been approved and created in conjunction with supervisors and directors to ensure that we can provide continuity of in-person services when and where they're needed. And again, we'll continue to provide most of our services. So that's kind of an overview of what's in the Level Clear plan and how it's structured and what the public health requirements that are in place. We would like to give a brief overview of our special events that we have planned. Emily Hogan is going to provide that overview, and then we're happy to answer any questions about the Level Clear plan and our special events plan for the summer. So I'll turn it over to Emily.
Thanks, Megan. Good evening, Mayor and council members. Can you hear me okay? Great. So I'll be going over our tentative plans for the city's special events. First is Touch a Truck, which usually occurs over Memorial Day weekend. Staff is proposing to not host the event this year. Next is a summer reading celebration that will be held on June 11th in the library parking lot, Front Street in front of the library, and the Steinbach Pavilion. Concerts and music events will be offered by registration. For 4th of July, staff is proposing to hold the annual fireworks at Coal Creek Golf Course with a special display that will reach a higher elevation to allow for more viewing across the city. The golf course will be closed to on-site viewing and kid activities like bounce houses and food trucks that would not take place this year. Staff will identify 3 additional viewing sites across the city to share with the public and encourage attending. City communications will also encourage residents to stay home if they can view the fireworks from there. The summer concerts is tentatively planned for Thursdays. The communication, I believe, says it'll start July 8th. The LCC has actually changed that to start on July 15th and just go straight through August 12th on Thursdays. And it will be held at its regular location at Community Park. These events typically attract 600 to 800 attendees at each concert. Special measures will be taken to reduce crowd size and lines, including booking smaller local acts and not having food trucks on site. Street fair is tentatively scheduled for Fridays, starting July 23rd through September 3rd. Attendance will not be limited, but special measures will have been taken to reduce crowd size, including booking smaller local acts and limited advertising. So for Labor Day and Fall Festival, this event typically attracts close to 10,000 attendees. During this transition year, staff proposes paring down events to reduce crowd size. The city will host the senior dinner and a modified Labor Day parade. The city will not host Fall Festival at Memory Square Park, which generally features bounce houses, food trucks, and children's entertainment. The city plans to host the senior dinner with prepackaged meals and required registration. The Labor Day parade would need to take place on an alternate route, as Main Street will be still closed for outdoor dining. Alternate routes that we've looked at include Pine Street and Via Appia. The Children's Pet Parade will also not take place this year. Additionally, the city could forego the traditional parade and do something similar to the 2020 drive-by car show. Staff is just beginning to plan for Labor Day, so any feedback or ideas from council would be appreciated. And for all events, we plan on having communications prior to and during events that encourage mask wearing if social distancing can't be maintained. And with that, happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions to this point in the presentation? Councilmember Fahey.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, this was a great presentation. I'll start off with that. I have two questions. One, on the rec center, is that just considered a city facility where the masking is required?
Correct. Yes, masking indoors is required in the rec center. And, you know, that's under the city ordinance. It's required indoors, basically in all places of public accommodation. If the city ordinance were to no longer be in effect and we fell back, it just would depend if the county's ordinance were in place. And the county's ordinance does say in public government buildings. So, you know, we would be able to apply that to the rec center as well.
Okay. And then my second question is regarding the 4th of July. We were talking with Superior doing some kind of partnering thing because they are still planning on having a 4th of July parade. Are we doing anything with that, with, you know, allowing them to come and watch the fireworks from our locations and then having our residents go see their parade?
Hi, Deb, this is Heather. You know, Matt and I are scheduled to talk next week and follow up to the Joint Issues Committee and some other issues too. So I can check in. I mean, I think maybe what would happen is, right, where our viewing sites, or maybe they'd offer some viewing sites in Superior. So we just have to coordinate. So I just need to touch base with him.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions from folks? All right, seeing none. Emily, I'll turn it back over to you.
So that's it for special events. Megan, did you have anything else that you wanted to go through?
No, I don't think I have anything specific. We're happy to answer any questions. I would just say, you know, in terms of communication and timing, so this will go live and will be in effect basically on Sunday, May 16th. That's when the transition to level clear happens. So it will impact those city facilities that observe a Monday through Friday schedule beginning next Monday. And we will have updated signage on all the doors of the facilities. We'll have, you know, updated information about the level clear plan that we'll be sending out, you know, this week to the community so that they know, you know, exactly what the new schedule, hours, and expectations will be for access services.
Thank you, Megan. And I'll just go back. It looks like we moved a little too quickly to get all the hands and comments. Councilmember Brown.
Thank you. I wanted to ask Emily and Megan if you all could talk a little bit about the permitting process for some of these larger events, to the extent to which it's already been happened even, and how what kind of COVID considerations are being applied when the city is approving plans. I mean, gives me some pause to hear about gatherings of 600 people, even if they are outdoors. So I just want to know what we're talking about and what the city has been doing to alleviate some of those potential risks.
So Councilmember Brown, I'll actually let City Clerk Muth talk about this because she handles the permitting and she's been communicating with people as they apply.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. At this point, Boulder County is no longer under level clear. Boulder County is no longer requiring COVID plans for large events if they're outside. So we have pretty much followed their lead on that. The kind of events I'm seeing permit requests for right now, I got one today for an event in Community Park, about 500 people. We had a running race last weekend, but it was only about 50 people, I think. I have a small bike race event that's out in CTC. So I haven't seen the big ones, but I do know that Turkey Trot definitely wants to come back in the fall. So that's probably the biggest event we have, along with Street Fair. At this point, since things are outside, we're recommending people wear masks when they're unable to social distance. But past that, we don't have a requirement for a COVID plan.
Thank you very much. So just to follow up on that, City Clerk, we would approve and permit if a vendor wanted to host a particular get-together of hundreds of people, but not post any signs about masks or not require people to have masks. Is that right?
Correct, because at this point, our outdoor regulations don't require them.
Okay.
We also do have a condition in the permits that says that the permit can be revoked at any time if something changes.
Sure.
And that we can instill additional conditions if conditions change as well.
Sure. Yeah, I guess that's interesting to me. I would be very concerned if we ended up with a super spreader event in Louisville. I don't think that would necessarily happen, but it is just something for us to keep in mind. That's not the kind of press that we'd want in Louisville. So just something to continue to monitor. So, thank you.
I would just add that what we are seeing from some of our usual sort of partners like Farmers Market and Street Fair, that they're part of their communication, and this is what we're recommending people do is include sort of that COVID etiquette. So it's, that we're encouraging masks outdoors so that people are still, getting that message through many of the events that we typically partner with.
So I anticipate getting a lot of phone calls regardless of what we do, just because, we're, stepping up or we're coming into a new phase where some people will want to move more quickly. Some people will want to move more slowly. I think there'll be people that feel very uncomfortable when they see large crowds. Other people will be very eager to finally get out and do something, outside and in the open when they've been cooped up. So did the staff consider just saying, since the county is saying that face coverings are recommended outside when we have large gatherings, could we just ask the people hosting the gatherings to post signs to that effect, that public health is recommending masks when there are large gatherings? Just requiring that signage be posted. I mean, it's just a small thing, but I mean, I think regardless of what we do, like I started off with, I think we will get a lot of calls. I think the police will get a lot of calls. So just trying to head some of it off and encourage people to do what public health is actually asking them to do, even though it's not required.
Yeah, we can absolutely ask them to put signs up or require them to put signs up.
Yeah, and I will say one thing that we've been paying really close attention to the details of all the plans, and under the county's new mask ordinance, they actually don't recommend masking outdoors. They have changed their language now, and so now they're recommending, they say Boulder County Public Health still recommends that all individuals aged 2 years and older who have not been vaccinated should practice physical distancing of 6 feet, hand washing, and wearing of face coverings whenever near members of other households. So they've changed their recommendations a little bit, which is, you know, we've been trying to follow that because we are getting feedback from all different types of places, including people who, you know, are wondering about the recommendations. So we've been saying we're encouraging people to wear masks outdoors when social distancing can't be maintained.
Thank you, Megan. I appreciate that. Not to reinterject myself into this, apologies, Mayor. But I think it's important for us, even if our ordinance, even if the public health or the public health ordinance don't require certain things, that there are still best practices and recommendations either by the CDC or by our own county public health department. I mean, the cognitive dissonance that exists within that public health order is striking to me, right? We recommend everyone over 2, but we're not requiring anyone over 10, and only in these certain cases. And so it's important that, like, public health is built upon sort of voluntary measures and recommendations as opposed to requirements. So I think that we should not be afraid to encourage folks and recommend in the same way, even if it's not specifically required. Not that I'm giving direction, I'm just commenting, sorry. Because this is a study session. So.
Any other thoughts on the special events? Councilmember Dickinson.
Yeah, Matt, I think this is a great plan. Obviously, we're at May 11th and talking about some things, you know, in July and stuff like that. So I imagine, like everything we've done, it's all subject to change based on all the current information at the time, right? So obviously, if there's a spike in cases or the hospitals are being overwhelmed, I imagine we'll pull back. And if, you know, cases have dropped to 0, wouldn't that be great? If cases have dropped to 0 in mid-June, then 4th of July might look different. So as far as lag time and councils need to give direction, you know, just kind of what's needed from us, or what's the plan for revisiting these things? Is this a constant conversation we'll be having because things change so quickly? I guess I was a little concerned, thinking, you know, I think we're going to clear on May 16th, and so as a county, and so the city and the county will not be aligned as of May 17th unless we talk about that, right? So is that on the agenda? And then, like, is that on the, you know, I'm just trying to figure out how we maintain some consistency. If we want to maintain consistency, how do we do that? How do we plan for that? So if anyone can help me understand that, that'd be great.
Turn it over to Megan, perhaps, to start off, or to turn it over to the right person. Deputy City Manager Megan Davis.
Sure, yeah, so I'll try to answer a couple of those questions, Councilmember Dickinson. So first, in terms of kind of the iterative process of the planning for events, I think that this is probably what we have in Level Clear, because Level Clear with the county's guidance is intended to be in place through August 15th. And so I think these are the special event plans we will stick to. You know, again, if some of the guidance changes, then we might, you know, we'll change our recommendations around that. But in terms of how we have structured 4th of July, how we're structuring summer concerts in the park, those events, will stick to that, because there's a certain amount of planning that we have to do in advance in order to execute on them. So we won't be able to, you know, come back to you before 4th of July to get more guidance and change that plan. I think that's, you know, pretty set. So, and then, you know, with regard to the Level Clear order, the Level Clear plan that we have is entirely, or it's pretty much aligned exactly with Boulder County's Level Clear order. The only difference that the city has is our mask order. So our mask ordinance is the one piece that will be different from Boulder County beginning May 16th. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, sorry. So for clarification, because I was pretty confident I knew everything as of today, as of May, let's just call it 17th, we're still aligned on that day with our current, or do we need to change to be aligned as of May 17th?
Well, if you wanted the mask order to be aligned with the county's mask order, their mask order actually is on a different timeline than their level clear plan. So okay. their mask order is I believe June 5th. Is that right, Heather? I think it's on the 5th. And so, but as we move towards level clear, our operating protocols will be aligned with the counties, with the exception of the mask piece.
But the exception just being the age portion, right? Like the only difference we made a month ago was that, was that everything's the same except we're applying it to 2 to 11-year-olds, whereas the county was only applying it to 12 and up, or right? That was the one difference. Everything, like location was the same, everything was the same except the age, right?
Correct. But they have changed theirs. They had a new mask order that came out last week, and that mask order is has some differences than from ours.
So I think I apologize. I think I'm a little bit ignorant on I think I missed that, and I apologize. The specific differences of their change because when I read their change, it looked similar. I was trying to figure out like what actually changed. So I apologize, but I think it'd be helpful if you could, I guess that's the whole point of this. If you could help me understand exactly what changed for the county and where we now don't align with the county based on their changes.
Yes, I'm happy to do that. So, so on May 5th, when they went to their new order, previously it, similar to ours, applied to basically all indoor spaces, all indoor places of accommodation. So anywhere in the public that's not your home, essentially. And now they have outlined some specific locations where it applies across the board. And those are the places like preschools, grade school, schools, child care centers, indoor camps, public areas of government facilities, congregate care facilities, prisons and jails, healthcare settings, retail stores, grocery stores. And then they now have some exclusions that can be applied depending on vaccination status.
Okay. So I apologize because you went through all this, and I don't mean to make you go through it again. I think it's in the exceptions that we have that difference in the kind of confusing if so many people are vaccinated, and I remember looking at that. So
correct.
And obviously we didn't do that. Otherwise I'd have a better working knowledge of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, I'm sorry. It's confusing.
Mayor Pro Tem Maloney.
I'm glad that Councilor Dickinson said he was, did you use the word ignorant?
Yes.
Because it makes it easier for me to say, I must be more ignorant. You know what this discussion is getting to is this is getting complicated. And here we are as counselors trying to discuss and understand this as we have, the definition from the county that keeps moving and it's a little out of sync with our ordinance. I think this is something we need to put on our agenda. And I know we're getting to that. And I think that we need to have a discussion because if we're having this level of discussion, I can't imagine what the citizens how they're trying to figure this out, as well as the visitors to the town. The people who come to McCaslin or Dillon to restaurants or downtown or so forth. So I think this would be a good agenda item. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So I agree that we should add it. We're probably going to have to continue to talking about, how we step out of this many meetings in the future. So we should definitely add it to a meeting to talk more in detail about how we might want to change it. So a lot of the emails that I've gotten from people that want us to move forward actually misunderstands the county order, and they think they don't have to wear a mask inside of retail shops anymore, which is not the case in the county order. So I think it is actually unfortunate how the county has done their PR around it, because I think they've created quite a lot of confusion, which is frustrating. But the piece of it that I think, we should have some more conversation about when we put it on a future meeting and get some additional information on is from some of the businesses that are exempt and from some of the retailers. I talked to a couple restaurant owners this week about concerns with people coming in and saying they don't have to wear a mask anymore, but they don't want to check vaccination cards. Like, they don't want to have to say to their customers when they come in, do you want to volunteer up your vaccination card? It's an awkward situation to put them in. So it's just much easier to say the city's making me require you to wear a mask than it is for them to get into this conversation about who's vaccinated and who's not. And, we're not to 80% of our population in Louisville yet. We have about 20% of people that are under 18. So it'll get, closer when we get the 12-year-olds in the category that can be vaccinated. So we're getting closer and closer. And that'll make it easier for us to remove these restrictions once there's less question. But there is this awkward transition period. So it's definitely worth talking about at a future council meeting and figuring out where we should be. One thing I've heard from people is that, well, you're city council, you don't know anything about public health. And I'm not quarreling. That's absolutely the county's obligation, is to be responsible for public health. But what the city has to be responsible for is enforcement. And so from a practical standpoint, they might have a really great idea of a perfect system from a health standpoint, but it may be impossible to enforce. And so we will get the phone calls, the police will get the phone calls, the businesses will get the threats from customers. So we do have to think about the way that it's actually communicated out and enforced across the community. So I think it'll be a very fruitful conversation, and threading the needle will be just as hard coming out of the pandemic as it was coming into the pandemic, and we'll try our best, and I'm sure it'll be a good conversation. City Manager Balser, I'm sure internally we've had some discussions about if we want to ask our employees if they're vaccinated, just do you want to tell us about any of those conversations and where the city, that raises issues and questions and concerns. So as an employer, we actually encounter some of the same challenges the other employers will encounter. And my understanding from listening to Denver Public Health Director Bob McDonald is that no employer can ask their employees or require their employees to disclose whether they've been vaccinated, but they can ask their employees if they would like to volunteer that information. That was the way Bob McDonald described it to the mayor's group. So just if you want to tell us anything about that, just to educate us a little and inform us, going forward, what we might think about before we change our rules.
Yeah, I would just say, right now, currently, so the city's mask ordinance does apply. So basically you mask indoors regardless of, so vaccination status isn't a factor. So, and outdoors, we've actually, so our employees are required to wear masks indoors, and outdoors, we continue to require them if they can't social distance to mask, even though that's not a requirement of the city or the county's order. I don't necessarily see that changing over the next few months, again, unless the city takes specific action on its mask ordinance, although that may still apply. I don't know. So in terms of vaccinating, so again, we're all trying to figure this out as the rules change, and I guess vaccinations increase as well, and really looking to Boulder County Public Health to provide some guidance. But we are not currently asking vaccination status. We are not doing regulations based on that, obviously, and we are not. It's not dictating necessarily how we interact with our employees. So,
and so if say the scenario where if the city council removes the mask order and just defaults to the county, and then let's just say for conversation's sake, the county didn't have the municipal buildings listed out as a requirement. If they were, under the part of it that says if you have 80% of people vaccinated, you don't have to wear masks. Have you thought at all about what we may or may not do? I mean, would you just have everyone wear masks still, or would we try to figure something out?
We probably, so this is again in terms of employees, because even counties for places of public accommodation, so it's really about like so when you come into City Hall, for example, you'd be required to wear a mask. So that would apply to staff and the public. It's really those back areas, or if you're having meetings where the public doesn't meet or doesn't have access. So if the city's ordinance went away and we were following Boulder County Public Health, you know, so again, it's consistent with what you said, Mayor, to ask folks if they'll, so 9 and under, you can unmask in places that are not points of public accommodation right now in the county order. So you could allow for that for those places that are not accessible to the public. And then above that, what you do is when you get to over 10 or over, you have to start counting if you have, so let's say if you have 11 people, you have to know that 2 are vaccinated as you go above the 9. Isn't that right, Megan? That's the conversation we just had with Boulder County Public Health. And then there's above 100, it's an 80% number. So it varies. So sorry, I'm getting into the weeds here. It's complicated, but so we'd have to figure out probably how to have those conversations with our employees, and we need to give guidance, and we look to our other cities and communities to see how they're doing that.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Thanks for that, City Manager. And then just my next question is just for Deputy Manager Davis. I know I've been hearing from a bunch of people with every different perspective, but from the people you're hearing from that are concerned about our local mask order, do you feel like they have a good handle on what the county order is? Like, do you think they understand that it's still required in retail shops and things like that? Or do you not have enough information to answer that question?
Yeah, I don't really have enough information to answer that question. I mean, my conversations are really with the departments, for example, with the rec center, and hearing feedback from them about what they hear from folks who are coming in. We have kind of regular calls about the COVID protocols, and so I don't have a sense of, you know, what people do and don't understand. I mean, I think we do recognize that it's gotten and is getting more complicated for people, and also people are getting tired, and so we're trying to be very clear about our communication and messaging, and consistent, you know, across all of our departments and across all of our messaging, so that we can, you know, articulate it as easily as possible at the facility when they walk in, so they know what's required right there.
For the rec staff, do you think it would be helpful for them to know that masking would still be required under the county ordinance? To be able to tell people that?
Yeah, I think they do. I mean, we've had conversations with them about, you know, what, because people do come in and they say, well, I'm vaccinated, so I want to, you know, do X, Y, and Z in the rec center with my vaccinated, you know, so we have crafted a message, like a canned response for people to understand that, you know, the city currently doesn't check people's vaccination status and does not, you know, provide any special accommodations for people who are vaccinated, or, you know, at this point. So we're responding with that kind of level of crafted information so that they can respond to people who come into the building.
Thank you. My sense from some of the comments I've gotten from folks who would like us to be, you know, more lenient, it seems like there is a misunderstanding about what the county's ordinance actually requires. So maybe we could provide that feedback to the county so that they can do a better job messaging where masks are still required under their ordinance. Councilmember Fahey?
Yes, thank you. I was just going to extend on that thought. Could we, in our messaging to Louisville residents, begin with our position that we are enforcing or at the same level as the county, with the exception that we've lowered the age requirement? That's the only difference between us and the county, is the age cutoff. But if we actually begin with, we are following the county recommendations. And in addition,
Megan, maybe you'll clarify some of the other differences, but I think the problem is they've added some additional differences since the last time we spoke. Deputy Manager.
Yeah.
Deputy Manager, do you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, so they have added these additional exemptions, which I think, as City Manager Balzer articulated, that they don't necessarily go into effect in the public facing portions of public accommodations. But if, for example, you have meeting rooms in the back, or spaces where employees meet without the public, or if you're in kind of an office setting where there isn't that public face, then there is this provision, this sort of exemption from that mask requirement that factors in the vaccination piece. So I think that's where, as the mayor said, people see that and they think that that exemption might apply sort of everywhere. And well, I'm vaccinated, or I'm with this group of people who are vaccinated, so we should be able to be together unmasked kind of wherever we want. So I think it's just that level of detail around the county's order. And the county's order does mirror the state's pretty much entirely. So I think that's what's confusing to people.
So yeah, this is Heather again. So I would just say, we're trying to be very clear that the city's ordinance applies. And so that you have to mask indoors. I mean, that's what the city's ordinance says. So if you want changes, then again, I think that's part of the conversation. If you want revisions to the city's mask ordinance, but right now the city's ordinance is masking indoors for like 95% of the time as it applies to city facilities. So, and that is different than the counties and the states.
Well, but I think that most of the complaints that we're getting are from people who, for example, want to go into the rec center, say, I'm vaccinated, let me work out without a mask. And even the county wouldn't allow that. Is that right?
There are some exceptions where they would allow, depending on whether it's classified as a room and it's public access. So there are, so it's not just as simple as saying the county, and there's lots of nuances here. So that's the difficulty, which is why, I mean, to some extent, the city ordinance is in some ways more clear because you're just required to wear a mask indoors.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, it strikes me that the county's ordinance is exceedingly confusing, right? Like, even just reading through it, it's hard to tell what is actually required. It seems like things like you'd have, like if you're a kid and you're in school or in a day camp, for example, you'd have to wear a mask. But then there's, section 3, I believe, that indicates that no one under 10 has to wear a mask. So there's all these weird and special circumstances. It makes it very, I think, to the mayor's point earlier, it makes it very difficult to enforce. You could theoretically come up with a situation where, you're having to check people's vaccination status, and depending on whether someone walks in who's vaccinated or unvaccinated, you have to tell everybody who's in the room to put on their masks or not, or take off their masks. I mean, that seems a little bit onerous, in my opinion. I think to Councilmember or Mayor Pro Tem Maloney's point, talking about it, thinking about how we can make ours more clear, makes a lot of sense. But even within the ordinance itself from the county, there's a lot of wear it if you're to, except that you're not required to. There's some real challenges here. So I think we do our citizens a great service if we can try to clarify that, and use whatever tools we have to try to make it as simple for businesses and for people as possible.
I'm not seeing any other hands or comments or questions from folks.
So Mayor, and maybe you're just going to get to this under future agenda items, but and I'm not sure we can have it for the 18th. So would we like the mask ordinance on a future agenda to discuss?
Yes, it sounded like there was consensus around that we would definitely like to discuss it.
Okay.
And, just leave it open-ended. I wouldn't put it down that like we're necessarily removing, but we'll have discussion and action, and we may remove it, we may amend it, we may not. I don't know that we've just determined that outcome, but that'll be discussed at that meeting and determined there.
Yep.
All right, so that takes us to our next item this evening, which is our advanced agenda. Does everyone have a copy of the advanced agenda available to them?
Mayor, I just have a few quick comments on the advanced agenda.
City Manager Balser.
So just a couple of things. So May 25th, we were thinking that, so that item that's on there, which is, now I gotta find mine. The additions to the building code, we're waiting on some DOLA information, so I'm not sure we'll have that one ready to go. So maybe that's an opportunity to have a conversation about masking potentially. The masks ordinance. So we'll come back to you on that one. And then also as it relates to the transportation tax, so we're scheduled to have some conversation about design and costs on June 1st. And then we have the budget amendment on June 15th, and we'll have a chance to look at fund balances. So we may, and then we're on break. So we may need to have a special meeting that week. To get some final direction, because when we come back to you, it'll be July 13th, which is when we'll have to have first reading on ballot language. So just not sure what that's going to look like. We're having some, and also have to figure out where the conversation with LRC goes. So we're having our first conversation tomorrow at the LRC meeting. So just letting you know that there's probably going to require some additional meetings. Don't know when that'll be, but also it has to be in light of additional information that is still forthcoming. So wanted to let you know that. And then as well, June 1, we're looking to make some revisions to the emergency declaration to consider removing suspension of water shutoffs and late fees. So we would, we're seeing a lot of cities do this, but at the same time, keeping their emergency declaration because it could impact receipt of state or federal funding related to COVID recovery. So we wanted to have a conversation with you about how you want to do that moving forward. And we'd also need to let customers know as well. So I wanted to have that conversation.
Is there any interest from the group in discussing removing the parts about water shutoff? I just am looking for a head nod that folks want to add that to the advanced agenda.
I don't.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't, we don't have to.
Right, that's why I'm looking for a head nod from folks that they would like to add that to the advanced agenda.
So for clarity, I'm sorry to interrupt. That would mean that we would be repealing the prohibition on us shutting people's water off. That kind of thing.
Yeah. So the late fees, so it would go back to what it was pre-pandemic. And because the state removed some of their restrictions, and not necessarily that those applied previously, but that's kind of what we were following. And so some of those restrictions have gone away. And so we've seen a lot of cities have this conversation. So if we don't want to, we don't need to. I think, and we can also give you, the plan was to give you an update on, what we're seeing in terms of shutoffs in those or fees and those kinds of things, if there's a number of folks or not.
And you'd let us know about how many people are using the special reserve that we've set up with Sister Carmen for folks who can afford their bill. Yeah.
I think, assuming we can get those numbers, but yeah, I mean, I think that's been, we haven't seen a ton of folks, and I think that's because we've had a number.
I wasn't trying to upset the apple cart or disrupt anything tonight, but if there was no interest in having that discussion from folks, then there was no need to have staff do all the work to putting it on the advanced agenda. But if there is interest in people having the discussion, then we should bring it forward. So I just was trying to gauge, and I genuinely cannot tell what you all are thinking from your faces. Caleb's not interested in discussing it. Yeah, is that what that means?
Correct.
Mayor Pro Tem Maloney may have a comment. I know you have other comments, but just on whether or not this point, the city manager brought up.
Regarding this one, I don't know what all of the items are that I mean, I know that this is one that we changed. We made a consideration. We're also working with Sister Carmen, where we're funding if people need help with their water bill. So I think we have an avenue. I would like to see this on the agenda. City manager, I guess I'd like to know, what are the other things that, we temporarily suspended or, made accommodations are, because I think that, 2021, I mean, we're moving towards normalization, and I'd like to get back to normal as much as we can. And I do have additional comments when we get there.
All right, so it looks like there's at least some interest in having it on a future agenda. So we'll put it there unless I see overwhelming movement from folks. All right, so we will have that discussion as the city manager described. And now we'll turn it over in order. Mayor Pro Tem Maloney, then Councilmember Brown, then Councilmember Lay. Mayor Pro Tem Maloney.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess the first thing, it's not something that's on the agenda, but it's something I would like to encourage the chairs of the various council committees. And as the chair of the finance committee, I look at the break we're having. And for example, the finance committee meeting would be during the break. And so it is my intention to, at the finance committee meeting next week, is try to move that so it's not within the break period. So both council and staff get a break for those weeks that we're not meeting. So I hope that everybody, takes that in consideration. I think the other thing was the height ordinance or discussion. I don't see that on the agenda. City manager, do you have a slot for that? Is that going to be next week or
Tuesday? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, great. I didn't see it on there. I just wanted to make sure. So those are my initial comments. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. It was supposed to be last week, and so it had fallen off the advanced agenda, and so it will be on next Tuesday's meeting. Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to just flag for everybody that on the advanced agenda on June 1st, we are scheduled to discuss the Pride Month proclamation. And I'm sure many of you remember approving a Pride Month proclamation last year, and that we were able to fly flags at City Hall and at the library. And I think this year, I've been working with Boulder County, having some conversations with them already about making our flags, doing a few more flags across town, and doing some smaller flags, potentially in a median on McCaslin, which would be consistent with what is done in other cities. So I just wanted to flag that and the ordinance that we would be addressing at that particular time. So.
Thanks, Councilmember Brown. Councilmember Lay.
Yeah, one is a little more imminent, and one is just something to flag for way down the road, but still this year. We talked last week about having a joint meeting, a special meeting with the LRC. There's an LRC meeting tomorrow, and there'll be a lot of questions concerning the potential ballot measure that we've been discussing. And I think, and the city manager can correct me, I think we'll be on our council. What are we talking about that again on the 15th?
So right now we have a conversation about design and costing on the 1st, and then we have a budget amendment discussion, and we don't so that's the question is, I'm thinking it probably takes a separate meeting to then coalesce all that conversation. So most likely that'll be an additional meeting, possibly the 17th that week, or we could do it on the 15th. So it's just trying to still figure and understanding where the LRC is in the conversation as well. So it's a little fluid right now.
Yeah, and I recognize I've certainly emphasized exactly using that word with the LRC, that some things, the information and the development is somewhat fluid. I think we had talked last week about having a meeting between council, frankly, what I guess I would call a council and LRC commissioner intensive meeting, both to just catch up a little bit because we haven't had a chance to meet. And this proposal that we're working on is, coming very fast. And we talked about getting together just to talk a little bit more about some current priority issues, but be able to face talk a little bit more about what our vision is of the collaboration and the vision is for how we might use these projects and the support of both of them by both entities as a way of helping to transform and ameliorate blight over in the URA. So I think there's an open question. I had heard just a minute ago, I think the city manager was talking about potentially having a special meeting for perhaps other purposes, maybe the week of the 8th of June. Is that correct?
No, it was the week, it was after the 15th meeting. It was the 17th.
Yeah, and no, I meant for other purposes, not, well, at any rate, to the extent that council is interested in meeting directly with the LRC to discuss what we talked about last week and what I've just sort of tried to summarize just a minute ago. I think that is a meeting that would be good to have between now and the 15th of June. I think what I am concerned about, and we'll know a little bit more about this tomorrow, and if we want to wait until tomorrow to make a firm decision, I'm fine with that. But I do want to give you a heads up that I think it would help for us as counselors to be meeting with the commissioners to talk directly about the plans a bit, and not just for the purpose of encouraging support, but talking more particularly about the relationship that we have and how this set of projects may serve both of our respective mandates. So I want to throw that out there because it does affect staff, and I did have a discussion with the city manager about this and want to make sure that we are respectful of staff time, because I know that any extra meeting creates extra work for staff, and I know that people are working on vacation schedules and such, and I am not interested in, the point is not to get in the way of that. We just have a lot to do if there's going to be a proposal that we want to throw before the voters or put before the voters. And it seems like that meeting would be a very wise use of time for the council. And I think we could do it with less staff time than certainly the other meetings that we have and anticipate later in June. So I don't know where that leaves us in terms of putting a meeting on the agenda, but I wanted to get people thinking about that. And we'll know more tomorrow, I think, about whether LRC, if LRC were to say, we don't want a meeting, we don't need a meeting, we want to, we're fine waiting until June 15th or thereafter, to get council's input and so forth, that's fine. That is not my impression as a member of LRC and talking to the chair of the LRC. Her impression is that kind of meeting would be very helpful and would help facilitate better understanding and potential potentially improve the prospect of collaborating in a smooth way, and make the further meeting that will happen a little less pressurized, a little less, you know, we have to get everything resolved in one meeting or we're toast. Because I think that I'm just trying to create some space, a little bit of space to do that. And we've got the month in between. So I don't know how people feel about that, but that's one thing. The other thing that I would just throw out there is that at some point we should probably put, we're going to need to sort of evaluate the lawyers again, the city attorney and the municipal judge and the water attorney. And I don't know who's going to do that this year because we don't have a sitting legal committee, but that's just, I just want to raise that for something down the road, because that time will pass and we just want to make sure we get that into place somewhere.
So there's an executive session tentatively scheduled for that on October 5th. So we'll come to you guys in August or September and ask probably for 2 members to be appointed to do the initial review.
Thank you. Thank you. I did not see that, Meredith. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. That's all I had.
Thank you. So Councilmember Lay raised a lot of good comments around the process. So tomorrow, Councilmember Lay, obviously you're the member of council that's on the LRC, so you'll do a great job there. And it's of course a public meeting. Are any other folks planning on going tomorrow to the LRC meeting? So we have a couple members, maybe a couple more would like to go. So, I mean, we had a pretty full discussion on the topic. So I know you'll all do your best to be collaborative and in the spirit of how the discussion went at the council meeting. And I'm sure that'll be a good first step. And then Councilmember Lay, you and the city manager will work on scheduling the appropriate time for that follow-up meeting. Is that what you laid out for us there?
I think that's what we'll do. But I just wanted to give you a heads up that is what is probably the most likely scenario. So I just didn't want it to be a surprise or whatever. And we will definitely be collaborative mode tomorrow.
Excellent. That sounds like a great plan. And so were there any other items that needed to be added to an advanced agenda? Any other questions about what topics are on an advanced agenda? No? All right. Well, seeing no other discussion on that, we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.